My name is Garrett Moss. I'm a solo hunter who specializes in backcountry bow hunting in the most remote sections of the Appalachian Mountains. In November of 2023, I set up camp in the Nantahala National Forest in western North Carolina. I was hunting white-tailed deer in an area so remote that the nearest logging road was 6 miles behind me. On my third night there, I heard something that shouldn't have been possible. Human voices, screaming for help, coming from a gorge that satellite imagery showed was completely inaccessible. What I found there changed everything I thought I understood about time, space, and what can get trapped in the deep folds of these mountains. I arrived at my hunting site on November 8th. Solo hunting in the Appalachian backcountry requires careful planning. I carried everything I needed for 7 days: tent, food, water filtration, hunting deer, emergency supplies. The area I'd chosen was a ridge system overlooking a series of valleys known for deer activity. According to my maps, there was a deep gorge about a quarter-mile east of my camp. The gorge was marked as inaccessible terrain, vertical rock walls, no trails leading down, no historical record of anyone ever reaching the bottom. Perfect isolation. Exactly what I wanted. The first 2 days were routine. I set up my camp, scouted the ridges, found fresh deer sign. The weather was cold but clear, temperature dropping to the low 30s at night. On the third night, November 10th, I was sitting by my fire around 8 p.m. That's when I heard it. A scream, distant but clear. A woman's voice. "Help! Please! Someone help us!" I stood up immediately, grabbed my flashlight. The scream came again. "Is anyone there? We need help!" It was coming from the direction of the gorge. I moved toward the sound, carefully. The terrain near the gorge rim was rocky and unstable. The screaming continued. Multiple voices now. A woman, a man, and what sounded like children. "Help us! Please! Someone help us!" I called out. "Hello? Can you hear me?" The voices stopped. Complete silence for maybe 30 seconds. Then they started again, but different this time. "Help us! Please! Someone help us!" The exact same words, the exact same tone, like a recording on loop. I backed away from the rim, returned to my camp, tried to rationalize what I'd heard. Maybe it was wind moving through rock formations. Maybe it was animals. Coyotes can sound eerily human sometimes. But I knew what I'd heard. Those were human voices. Clear, desperate, real. The next morning, I hiked to a higher vantage point about half a mile west of my camp. From there, I could see down into the gorge at an angle. I pulled out my binoculars, and what I saw made no sense at all. At the bottom of the gorge, maybe 400 feet below the rim, there was a camp. A full family camping setup. 2 large canvas tents, a campfire with a cooking tripod, coolers, folding chairs, and people. A family of 5, a man and woman in their 30s, 3 children, 2 boys and a girl. They were dressed in clothing from another era. The man wore brown slacks and a white undershirt. The woman wore a floral print dress. The children wore clothes that looked like they were from the 1950s. And they were screaming. Through the binoculars, I could see them clearly. The woman was standing near the fire, looking up toward the rim, shouting. The man was waving his arms. The children were clustered together, crying. But here's what made it impossible. The gorge walls were vertical, sheer rock, no way down, no way up, no trail, no rope, no ladder. How did they get there? And more importantly, why were they dressed like they were from 1950? I watched them for 20 minutes. Their behavior was strange. They would scream for help for a few minutes. Then they would stop, return to their camp, sit down, act normal. Then suddenly, as though someone had flipped a switch, they would all stand up at once and start screaming again. Always the same pattern, always the same words. "Help us, please, someone help us." I radioed out to the ranger station. Static, no signal, too deep in the backcountry. I tried my satellite phone. Same result. I was on my own. I decided to try to make contact. I returned to the rim directly above their camp, called down, "Hello? Can you hear me?" The screaming stopped. The family looked up, directly at me. The woman shouted, "Yes, yes, we can hear you. Please help us. We've been stuck down here for days." "How did you get down there?" I called. "We hiked in," the man yelled. "But the trail collapsed. We can't get out." That was impossible. There was no trail. Never had been. "Stay there," I shouted. "I'm going to lower a rope." I went back to my camp, gathered 200 feet of climbing rope, tied one end to a sturdy tree about 10 feet back from the rim, tied the other end to a weighted stuff sack filled with rocks. I approached the rim carefully. The family was directly below, still screaming, still waving. I threw the weighted line down into the gorge, and something impossible happened. The rope fell normally for about 50 feet. Then it simply stopped, mid-air, as though it had hit an invisible barrier. The rope hung there, taut, suspended in empty space. I pulled on it. It didn't move. It was stuck on nothing. I pulled harder, and suddenly, the rope went slack. I pulled it up. The weighted end was gone, cut clean, as though it had passed through an invisible blade. I looked down at the family. They were still screaming, still waving, but something was different now. The woman's voice changed. "Garrett," she shouted. "Garrett Moss! Help us, Garrett!" I stepped back from the rim. I had never told them my name, never identified myself. "Garrett Moss!" the man yelled now. "Don't leave us, Garrett! We know who you are!" The children began chanting, "Garrett! Garrett! Garrett!" over and over in perfect unison. I backed away further. The voices grew louder, angrier. "Garrett Moss! Come down here! Come down and help us! Come down!" The sound was overwhelming, not just loud, but physically oppressive, like a pressure building in my skull. I felt myself being pulled toward the rim, not physically pulled, but compelled, an overwhelming urge to move forward, to step over the edge, to fall. I turned and ran, away from the rim, back toward my camp. The voices followed me, echoing through the gorge. "Garrett Moss, come back! You can't leave us! Come back!" I reached my camp, started packing immediately. Tent, sleeping bag, gear, everything thrown together. The voices were still audible, fainter now, but still calling my name. I shouldered my pack, started hiking west, away from the gorge. Didn't stop until I was 3 miles away. I made it back to civilization 2 days later. At the ranger station, I filed a report, described everything I'd seen and heard. The ranger, an older man named Henry Caldwell, listened carefully. When I finished, he was quiet for a long time. Then he said, "The Blackburn Gorge." "What?" I asked. "That's what we call it," he said. "The area you're describing. It's been restricted since the 1970s. We don't patrol there anymore." "Why?" I asked. He pulled out a file, old, yellowed with age. "In 1957, he said, "a family went missing in that area, the Pritchard family. Harold and Margaret Pritchard, their 3 children, ages 8, 10, and 12. They were camping. When they didn't return, a search was organized. No trace was ever found. No bodies, no equipment, nothing." He showed me a photograph from the file. A family of 5, dressed in 1950s clothing. The same family I'd seen in the gorge. "We've had reports before," Henry said. "Every few years, someone hears screaming from that gorge. Sometimes they see the camp, but no one has ever been able to reach it. And anyone who tries to make direct contact, they report the same thing you did. The voices turn hostile. They start using the person's name, and there's a compulsion to go over the edge." "What is it?" I asked. Henry closed the file. "We don't know. Some kind of temporal anomaly. A pocket where time doesn't move forward. The Pritchards are trapped in the moment of their death, reliving it forever, and trying to drag others in to share their fate." Before I left, Henry gave me the file to make copies for my records. As I was leaving the station, I noticed something in the pocket of my jacket. A coin, small, metallic. I pulled it out. It was a quarter, minted in 1957. I had never seen it before. It wasn't in my pocket when I arrived at the ranger station. Henry saw it in my hand. His expression changed. "Where did you get that?" he asked quietly. "I don't know," I said. "It was just in my pocket." He didn't say anything, just looked at the coin, then at me. "Keep it," he said finally, "as a reminder. Some places in these mountains don't follow normal rules, and some things that get trapped there are still trying to get out. I still have the coin. It sits on my desk. I've researched it. It's a standard 1957 Washington quarter. Nothing unusual about it, except for one thing. The date, 1957, the year the Pritchard family went missing. Sometimes late at night, I can hear them, faint, distant. "Garrett Moss, come back. We're still waiting." I haven't been back to the Nantahala backcountry. I haven't hunted solo in that region since, because I know what's still down there, in that gorge, in that pocket where time doesn't move. A family trapped in an eternal loop of terror, screaming for help that will never come. And if you hear them, if you see their camp, don't try to help. Don't throw them a rope. And for God's sake, don't tell them your name. Because once they know who you are, they'll never stop calling. Friends, that was the story of the cries of the unseen camp, the Pritchard family, trapped since 1957 in a temporal pocket at the bottom of Blackburn Gorge. If this story made you think twice about solo camping in remote areas, give it a like, subscribe, bell icon. Drop a comment and tell me, when Garrett threw that rope down into the gorge, when it hit that invisible barrier and the weighted end was cut clean, should he have left immediately, or was trying to help the right thing to do? Because I think he did the right thing, trying to help. But I also think he's lucky to be alive, because that family isn't trying to be rescued anymore. They're trying to add to their number, to pull someone else into that pocket, so they're not alone in their eternal loop. And if Garrett had gone one step closer to the rim, if he'd given in to that compulsion to fall, he'd be down there now, screaming, calling for help, using someone else's name. Until next time, some places in the mountains exist outside of time. Some moments never end, and some screams echo forever.
Hello, friends. Did you know that nearly 80% of those who watch my videos aren't subscribed? If you enjoy the content, I'd truly appreciate it if you hit that subscribe button. It helps a lot. Also, don't forget to leave a like and share your thoughts in the comments. Your interaction not only supports the channel's growth, but also helps these stories reach more people. Thank you all for being here. By the way, where are you watching from? Let me know in the comments. Now, let's get started. The oldest trees in the Appalachian Mountains have been standing for centuries, watching humans, listening to us, and hating us. Because the trees aren't just alive, they're conscious. They communicate. And what they're saying is that we are vermin, an infestation that needs to be cleared. My name is Dr. Natalie Crane. I'm a forest ecologist specializing in old-growth ecosystems. In June of 2024, I led a research team into the Joyce-Kilmer Memorial Forest in western North Carolina. It's one of the few remaining old-growth forests in the Appalachians, with trees over 400 years old. We went there to study water transport in ancient poplar and hemlock trees. What we discovered was something else entirely. The trees were communicating, complex, deliberate, intelligent, and every message we translated was about one thing: destroying us. The team consisted of 4 researchers: myself, Dr. Lucas Patterson, soil chemist, Dr. Simone Alvarez, acoustic ecologist, and our field technician, Owen Grant. We set up base camp near the Joyce-Kilmer Poplar Cove Loop Trail. Our objective was simple: install vibration sensors on 20 of the largest trees to measure water movement through their vascular systems. By analyzing the vibrations, we could determine how efficiently these ancient trees transported water from root to crown. Standard research, nothing unusual, until we started recording the data. We spent the first day installing sensors. Each sensor was a piezoelectric transducer that detected minute vibrations in the tree's xylem tissue. We placed them at various heights: base, mid-trunk, and crown. The sensors transmitted data wirelessly to our central recording station at camp. On the second day, we began collecting baseline data. That's when Simone noticed something. "Natalie," she said, staring at her laptop screen, "look at this waveform." She showed me the vibration data from Tree 7, a massive yellow poplar about 400 years old. The waveform was regular, too regular. "That's not random," Simone said. "That's a pattern, a repeating pattern." Over the next few hours, we analyzed the data from all 20 trees. Every single one was producing similar patterns: low-frequency vibrations, well below human hearing range, pulsing in complex, non-random sequences. "This could be subsonic communication," Simone said. "Trees are known to communicate through root networks and chemical signals. But this is different. This is acoustic, and it's coordinated." Lucas was skeptical. "You're saying the trees are talking to each other?" "I'm saying," Simone said carefully, "that these vibrations are too complex to be purely mechanical. There's information here. We just need to decode it." On June 8th, we ran the first translation. The results appeared on screen. We all stared in silence. The translation read, "Aware, aware, aware. The vermin are among us. They attach parasites to our skin. Prepare, prepare, prepare."
"That can't be right," Lucas said. "The algorithm must have interpretation errors." We ran the translation again, with different parameters. Same result. "Aware, aware, aware. The vermin are among us." We analyzed vibrations from Tree 12, a different poplar half a mile away. Translation? "Confirm. The infestation spreads. They burrow. They wound. Response required." Owen looked pale. "The sensors," he said quietly. "They're talking about our sensors, the parasites attached to their skin. The trees think we're infecting them." We spent hours debating what to do. Simone wanted to continue recording. "This is unprecedented," she said. "Tree communication at this level of complexity, we need to document it." Lucas wanted to leave immediately. "If these translations are accurate, and that's a big if, then we're being perceived as a threat, and I don't want to find out what response required means." I sided with Lucas. "We retrieve the sensors and leave. Tomorrow morning, we'll analyze the data off-site." We agreed. That night, none of us slept well, because around 2 a.m., the trees started speaking faster. The vibration frequency increased. What had been slow, deliberate pulses were now rapid-fire sequences. Simone monitored the translations through the night. The messages were changing. Location confirmed. Vermin nest identified. Eliminate, eliminate, eliminate. Coordinates shared. All units respond. Eradicate infestation. Deploy limbs. Block exits. Prevent escape. At 3:47 a.m., we heard the first crack. A massive branch fell across the trail, 50 feet from our camp. It was at least 2 feet thick, fresh break. No wind, no storm, just a sudden crack and the crash of impact. "That was deliberate," Owen said. "Trees don't just drop branches on calm nights." Another crack. Another branch fell. This one closer, maybe 30 feet away. "We're leaving," I said. "Now. We'll get the sensors in daylight." We packed quickly,
essentials only, left the camp standing, hiked by flashlight toward the trailhead. 2 miles, we could do it in 40 minutes. But the trees had other plans. Every 100 yards, we encountered obstacles, fallen branches, fresh, blocking the trail. We had to climb over them, detour around them, each one slowing us down. And behind us, we could hear more falling. Crack, crash, crack, crash. A pattern, methodical, like the forest was closing off our escape route. "They're hurting us," Simone said, "driving us deeper." She was right. Every detour took us further from the trailhead, further into the old-growth grove. "Stop," I said. "We need to think." We stood in a small clearing, surrounded by ancient trees, their trunks massive, their canopies blocking out even the moonlight. And in the silence, we heard it. A low vibration. Subsonic. Felt more than heard. It came from all directions. From the ground, from the trees themselves. Simone pulled out her portable recorder, captured the vibration, ran it through the translation program on her phone. The translation appeared. Surrounded, contained, prepare final action, eliminate all vermin, protect the grove. Owen's voice was shaking. Final action? What does that mean? Lucas pointed up. Look! Above us, in every tree surrounding the clearing, branches were moving, not swaying in wind, moving deliberately, bending, positioning themselves directly over us, as though preparing to drop. "Run!" I shouted. We sprinted, no direction, just away. Behind us, a massive branch crashed down, right where we'd been standing. Then another and another. The grove was attacking. We ran for 20 minutes, dodging falling branches, climbing over obstacles. The forest was trying to kill us. Finally, we broke through to a section of younger trees. The attack stopped. The branches stopped falling. We collapsed, gasping. "The old-growth grove," Simone said. "That's where the consciousness is. The ancient trees. They're the collective. Once we left their territory, the attack stopped." We made it to the trailhead by dawn. Never went back for the sensors. Never returned to Joyce Kilmer. When we submitted our findings to the university, they were rejected. Anthropomorphization of natural phenomena, no credible evidence of consciousness or intent. But we have the recordings, we have the translations, and we have the knowledge that those trees knew we were there, knew what we were doing, and tried to kill us. 6 months after Joyce Kilmer, Owen started showing symptoms. He couldn't be near wood, any wood. Furniture, buildings, paper. The sight of it triggered panic attacks, severe, debilitating. He had to leave his apartment, hardwood floors, and move to a place with all concrete and tile. He can't enter wooden structures, can't touch wooden objects. His therapist calls it a specific phobia, hylophobia, fear of wood, fear of forests. But Owen knows what it really is. The trees marked him. And now, whenever he's near wood, even processed, dead wood, he can feel them, watching, waiting, hating. I still do research. But never again in old-growth forests. Never again around ancient trees. Because I know the truth. The oldest forests in the Appalachian Mountains aren't just ecosystems. They're entities.
collective consciousnesses formed over centuries of root networks, chemical signals, and subsonic communication. And they remember everything. Every tree cut, every forest cleared, every fire set, every road built. They remember, and they hate us for it. The Joyce-Kilmer Memorial Forest is still open to visitors. People hike there every day. Families, children, tourists. They walk among those ancient trees. They take photos. They admire the beauty. And they have no idea that every tree is watching them, listening, communicating, coordinating, waiting for the right moment to clear the infestation. There are other old-growth forests in the Appalachians. Joyce-Kilmer isn't unique. And I believe, though I can't prove it, that all of them are connected, that the ancient trees across the entire mountain range form one vast network, one collective consciousness, spanning hundreds of miles, millions of trees, billions of roots, all thinking, all planning, all hating, and all waiting for the moment when humans become too much of a threat. Simone left academia after Joyce-Kilmer. She works in data analysis now, corporate work, safe, sterile, controlled. But she still has nightmares about the translations, about the messages we decoded, especially the last one, the one we recorded right before we escaped. Vermin flee, pattern noted, future response adjusted, next time no escape. If you ever visit an old-growth forest, Joyce-Kilmer, or any other ancient grove in the Appalachians, listen carefully. Not for birds, not for wind, for the silence beneath, the subsonic vibrations that your ears can't detect, but your body can feel. Because the trees are always talking, and if you stay too long, you might hear what they're saying. And trust me, you don't want to know what ancient trees think about humanity.
August in the Cascade foothills is supposed to be dry. The Meriwether River, which runs alongside Route 47 for 12 miles before disappearing into the backcountry, usually drops to a trickle this time of year. Exposed rocks, dry gravel beds, water so low you can walk across without getting your boots wet. That's why I wasn't worried when I started my patrol that Tuesday morning. My name is Marcus Webb. I've been a ranger with the state park system for 9 years, and the Meriwether River Trail is my responsibility. It's a beautiful stretch of wilderness, popular for day hikers and fishermen, mostly peaceful except for the occasional littering problem or lost dog. The trail follows the river for 8 miles, starting at the main access road and ending at Cathedral Falls, a modest 20-foot waterfall that's more scenic than impressive. During dry season, I patrol it twice a week, checking for trail damage, clearing debris, making sure the emergency call boxes are functional. It was 94 degrees that morning. I'd started early to avoid the worst of the heat, beginning my hike at 6 a.m. The air was still and heavy, the kind of oppressive silence that comes before a hot day. Even the birds seemed subdued. The river was exactly where I expected it to be. Low, sluggish, barely moving between the exposed boulders. I made good time on the trail, stopping every half mile to check the markers and photograph any maintenance issues for my report. By 8 a.m., I was 4 miles in, halfway to Cathedral Falls. That's when I saw her. She was standing on the opposite bank, maybe 30 yards downstream from where I'd stopped to drink some water. just standing there, perfectly still. At first, I thought she was a hiker who'd gotten separated from her group. I raised my hand to wave, opening my mouth to call out and ask if she needed help. Then I got a better look at her. She was soaking wet. Her long, dark hair hung in dripping strands around her face. Her clothes, a white dress that looked old-fashioned somehow, clung to her body, water streaming from the hem in steady rivulets. But the river behind her was bone dry. I felt my hand freeze in mid-wave. My greeting died in my throat. The woman didn't move, didn't acknowledge me, just stood there, staring straight ahead at nothing, water pouring off her like she'd just climbed out of a swimming pool. "Miss, are you okay? Do you need assistance?" No response. She didn't even blink. I started moving toward her, planning to cross the river and check on her condition. Maybe she was in shock. Maybe she'd had some kind of accident upstream where the water was deeper. But when I looked down to navigate the rocks, looking for safe footing across the nearly dry riverbed, I heard it, a sound like distant thunder. I looked upstream and my blood went cold. Water was coming, a wall of it, dark and churning, rushing down the riverbed with impossible speed. It wasn't a normal flood. There was no gradual rise, no warning. 1 second, the river was a trickle. The next, a wall of water 3 feet high was bearing down on me. I ran. I made it to higher ground just as the water hit, climbing onto a boulder cluster 15 feet above the normal water line. The surge roared past below me, violent and muddy, carrying branches and debris that hadn't been there moments before. It made no sense. We were in the middle of a drought. There hadn't been rain in 6 weeks. The weather forecast showed clear skies for the next 10 days. Where was this water coming from? I looked back toward where the woman had been standing. She was gone. The opposite bank was empty, the space where she'd stood now underwater, completely submerged by the impossible flood. I waited on my boulder for 20 minutes, watching the water rage below me. Then, as suddenly as it had started, it began to recede. The level dropped rapidly, unnaturally fast, the river shrinking back to its previous trickle as if the flood had never happened. Within 30 minutes, the riverbed was dry again. I stood there, shaking, trying to make sense of what I just witnessed. Flash floods were possible, technically, but not like this. Not without rain. Not with this kind of sudden onset and equally sudden retreat. And not with a dripping wet woman appearing and disappearing like a ghost. I radioed base. "This is Webb on the Meriwether Trail. I just witnessed an unusual water surge near mile marker 4, requesting hydrological data on upstream conditions." The response came back 5 minutes later. "No unusual activity reported, Webb. Reservoir levels are normal. No dam releases scheduled. Are you sure about what you saw?" I looked at the muddy waterline on the rocks, still wet, already drying in the August heat. "Confirmed," I said. "I'll file a full report when I return." I didn't mention the woman. I didn't know how. I cut my patrol short and headed back to the ranger station. Something was very wrong with the river, and I needed to understand what before someone got hurt. The first thing I did was check the geological surveys. The Meriwether River is fed by snowmelt from Mount Jefferson, channeled through a series of natural aquifers and underground streams. During dry season, the flow is predictable and stable. There's no mechanism for sudden floods without precipitation. Yet I'd seen one with my own eyes. Next, I reviewed incident reports. The Meriwether Trail had been open to the public for 63 years, and in that time, there had been surprisingly few accidents. A handful of twisted ankles, one bear encounter in 1987, a few cases of heat exhaustion. But there were 3 drownings. 1962, a woman named Sarah Whitmore, age 24, drowned while hiking alone. Her body was found near Cathedral Falls. 1979, a man named David Chen, age 31, drowned near mile marker 4. Witnesses reported the water level rose suddenly. 1998, a teenage girl named Rebecca Mills, age 16, drowned near the same location, also described as a sudden water surge. I felt my skin prickle. Mile marker 4. That's exactly where I'd seen the woman, where I'd nearly been caught by the flood. I dug deeper into the 1962 case. Sarah Whitmore had been a local school teacher, well-liked, engaged to be married. She'd been hiking on a Sunday morning in July and never came home. Search parties found her body 3 days later, caught in the rocks near the falls. The official cause of death was accidental drowning, though the coroner had noted the water levels were unusually low that week, making it unclear how she'd drowned. There was a photograph in the file. Black and white, slightly blurred but clear enough. Sarah Whitmore had long dark hair and a heart-shaped face. She was wearing a white summer dress. My hands started shaking as I held the photograph. It was her. The woman I'd seen on the riverbank was Sarah Whitmore, dead for 62 years. I knew how this sounded. I knew what anyone would say if I reported this. I'd be sent for psychiatric evaluation, maybe put on leave. You don't stay employed as a ranger by claiming you've seen ghosts. But the evidence was undeniable. 3 drownings across 6 decades, all at the same location, all involving sudden water surges that shouldn't be possible. And Sarah Whitmore was the first. I spent the rest of the day researching her life. Local newspaper archives from 1962 painted a tragic picture. She'd been planning her wedding, set for August 15th. She'd been excited about her teaching position at Jefferson Elementary. She had family in the area, friends, a fiancé named Robert Mills who'd been devastated by her death. Wait, Mills. I checked the 1998 drowning report again. Rebecca Mills, age 16. I pulled up the genealogical records. Rebecca Mills was Sarah Whitmore's great-niece, granddaughter of Sarah's younger brother. The connection made my stomach turn. This wasn't random. The river, or whatever controlled it, was targeting Sarah's family. I needed to understand why she drowned in the first place. The circumstances had always been unclear. Sarah was a strong swimmer, familiar with the trail. The water levels were low. Nothing about her death made sense, unless it wasn't an accident. I found the answer in a journal article from a local historian, published in 1985. It was a footnote, barely 2 paragraphs, but it changed everything. In 1961, a small cemetery on the banks of the Meriwether River had been relocated to make way for the trail system. 27 graves were exhumed and moved to the county cemetery. The process had been rushed and poorly documented. Some graves were missed. Sarah Whitmore's drowning occurred less than a year after the trail opened. She hadn't drowned by accident. She drowned because someone had desecrated the ground she was now bound to protect. Or haunt.
I drove to the county clerk's office the next morning. If graves had been relocated, there would be records, maps, documentation of which plots had been moved and where they'd been reinterred. The clerk, a woman in her 60s named Donna, looked at me skeptically when I explained what I needed. The old Riverside Cemetery? That was 60-some years ago. Most of those records are in storage. I need to see them, I said. It's related to an ongoing safety investigation. She sighed, but led me to a basement archive room stacked with file boxes. Good luck, she said. Nobody's looked at this stuff in decades. It took me 4 hours to find what I needed. The relocation had been handled by a company called Cascade Memorial Services, contracted by the state. They'd mapped the cemetery, exhumed 27 graves, and transported them to new plots at Greenwood County Cemetery. But the original cemetery had held 32 graves. 5 were unaccounted for. The maps showed their approximate locations marked with question marks and notes like stone missing or plot unverified. The state had bulldozed the area anyway, paved over the remaining graves, and built the trail directly on top of them. One of those unmarked graves was located at what would become mile marker 4. I drove out to the trail that afternoon, parking at the access point and hiking directly to the location. I knew what I'd find before I got there. The trail at mile marker 4 ran along a slight elevation, a raised bed of gravel and packed dirt that followed the river's curve. The area had been extensively modified during construction, flattened, reinforced, paved with a layer of asphalt that had been covered over with gravel for a more natural appearance. I stood there, looking at the ground, imagining what lay beneath. A casket, bones, the remains of someone who'd been buried with love and care, then abandoned when the cemetery was relocated. Someone the state had literally paved over. "I'm sorry," I said aloud, feeling foolish but compelled to speak. "I'm sorry this happened to you." The river behind me was silent, still, the water level exactly where it should be for this time of year. But I could feel her, a presence, watching, waiting. I pulled out my phone and called the county historian, a retired professor named Dr. Ellen Kaczynski, who'd written extensively about local history. "Dr. Kaczynski, this is Marcus Webb with the state parks. I need information about the old Riverside Cemetery, specifically about unmarked graves that weren't relocated in 1961. There was a pause. "That's oddly specific. May I ask why?" "Safety investigation," I said, keeping my tone professional. "There may be unmarked burial sites affecting trail stability." Another pause. "I see. Well, I did research on that cemetery years ago. Most of the unmarked graves were from the 1880s and 1890s before record-keeping became standardized. Poor families mostly, people who couldn't afford headstones. Do you know if any of them were connected to drowning victims, specifically people who drowned in the Meriwether River?" The silence that followed was heavy. When Dr. Kaczynski spoke again, her voice changed. "You've seen her, haven't you?" My grip tightened on the phone. "Who?" "The woman in white, the one who appears before the river rises." I couldn't speak. Dr. Kaczynski sighed. "I've heard the stories for years, local folklore mostly dismissed as superstition. But there's always been talk of a woman who haunts the river, a bride who drowned before her wedding day." "Sarah Whitmore," I said. "That's the name that gets mentioned most often, yes, but the phenomenon predates her death. There were reports of a river ghost as far back as the 1890s. Sarah Whitmore may be the most recent victim, but she's not the original." My mind raced. Then who is? That's the question I could never answer. The original cemetery records burned in a courthouse fire in 1923. We know there was a grave there, unmarked, belonging to a young woman. She's mentioned in one journal entry from 1891, written by a minister who performed her burial. He described her as a poor child taken by the water before her joy could be realized. A bride, drowned before her wedding day. Just like Sarah Whitmore had drowned weeks before her wedding day. "Dr. Kaczynski, I need to know exactly where that grave is located. She have coordinates from the original cemetery plat map, but I should warn you, Mr. Webb, multiple people have tried to address this over the years. Memorial plaques, prayer services, even an exorcism in the 1970s. Nothing worked. Whatever's there doesn't want to be appeased." "I have to try," I said. She gave me the coordinates. I thanked her and hung up. Then I stood at mile marker 4, looking at the ground, and began to plan. I couldn't dig up a state trail without authorization, and I couldn't get authorization without explaining why I wanted to dig, so I had to be smart about this. I requisitioned ground-penetrating radar equipment under the guise of checking for trail subsidence. The GPR unit arrived 2 days later, and I spent the afternoon of August 12th scanning the area around mile marker 4.
The results were conclusive. Approximately 6 feet below the current trail surface, there was a distinct rectangular anomaly consistent with a burial vault. Wooden, probably pine, collapsed but still intact enough to register on the scan. This was it, the unmarked grave, the source of the haunting. I now had to decide what to do about it. Dr. Kaczynski had said that previous attempts at appeasement had failed, but those attempts had been performative, done from a distance, treating the grave as a curiosity rather than a person. Nobody had actually addressed the core problem. The woman buried here, whoever she was, had been forgotten. Her grave had been paved over, literally erased from history. And then Sarah Whitmore, another bride robbed of her future, had drowned in the same spot, her spirit drawn to the older, angrier presence already bound to this place. They weren't causing the floods out of random malice. They were crying out. They were demanding to be remembered. I could give them that. On the night of August 14th, I returned to mile marker 4 with supplies. A shovel, a heavy-duty pry bar, flowers, white roses, a small wooden cross I'd carved myself, and a silver ring I'd purchased that afternoon, plain and simple, the kind a poor family might have afforded in the 1890s, the kind a bride might have worn. I started digging at midnight. The August heat had broken, and the air was cool, almost cold. The river beside me was silent, too silent. I broke through the gravel layer, then the asphalt, then the compacted fill dirt beneath. My hands blistered, my back ached, but I kept digging, widening the hole, going deeper. At 4 feet down, my shovel hit something solid, wood, rotted and fragile, but unmistakable. I'd found her. I cleared away more dirt, exposing the top of the casket. The wood was black with age and decay, held together more by the surrounding earth than its own integrity. I said a quiet prayer, then gently, carefully, I laid the roses on top of the casket. I'm sorry you were forgotten. I'm sorry your grave was taken from you. I'm sorry no one honored your memory. The air grew colder. The river behind me began to move. I'm placing this ring as a symbol, I continued, my voice shaking slightly. You were meant to be a bride. You deserved that joy. I can't give it back to you, but I can acknowledge what was taken. I set the silver ring carefully on the casket next to the roses. Then I planted the wooden cross at the head of the grave. May you be remembered. May you find peace. The river roared. I turned just in time to see the water rising, not gradually, but all at once, a wall of black water surging toward me with murderous intent. I tried to scramble out of the hole, but my foot caught on the edge of the casket. The water hit me like a physical blow, filling the grave, pulling me down. I went under, my lungs burning, my hands clawing at dirt and darkness. Through the murky water, I saw her. Not one woman. 2. The first was ancient, her features eroded by time, wearing the rotted remnants of a wedding dress from another century. The second was Sarah Whitmore, still young, still wearing her white summer dress, her eyes fixed on me with an expression I couldn't read. They reached for me. I stopped fighting. If they wanted me dead, I was already gone. If they wanted something else, struggling wouldn't help. So I let the water hold me, and I met their eyes, and I thought as clearly as I could, I'm sorry. I'm sorry for what was done to you. I'm sorry you suffered. You deserved better. The older ghost's hand touched my face, cold as ice, gentle as a whisper. Then the water released me. I burst to the surface, gasping, clawing my way out of the grave. I lay on the trail, coughing up river water, my whole body shaking. When I could finally breathe again, I looked around. The river was calm, normal, the water level exactly where it should be. The grave I dug was empty of water, though the ground around it was soaked. The roses I'd placed were gone, dissolved, or carried away. The wooden cross stood upright, and the silver ring was nowhere to be seen. I filled in the grave as the sun rose. By 7 a.m., I'd restored the trail surface as best I could, packing down the gravel, smoothing it over. You couldn't tell anything had been disturbed unless you looked very carefully. I filed a report about trail subsidence repair at mile marker 4. Nobody questioned it. Over the next 2 weeks, I patrolled the river trail daily, watching, waiting for signs of the haunting to return. Nothing happened. The river stayed calm. The water levels remained predictable. No dripping woman appeared on the opposite bank. On August 28th, I brought Dr. Kaczynski to the site. I showed her where I'd dug, what I'd found, what I'd done. She stood there for a long time, looking at the ground, then at the river. "I think you did it," she said quietly. "I think you gave them what they needed. Acknowledgement, respect, a chance to be seen." "Will it last?" I asked. She shook her head. "I don't know. Ghosts are manifestations of unfinished business, unresolved trauma. You addressed the immediate cause, but memory is fragile. As long as this trail exists, as long as people walk over that grave without knowing what's beneath their feet, there's a risk the anger will return." "Then we need to make sure people remember," I said. It took 3 months and a lot of bureaucratic wrangling, but I managed to get a memorial plaque installed at mile marker 4. It reads, "In memory of those laid to rest at the old Riverside Cemetery, 1870 to 1961. May their spirits find peace in these hills they once called home." It doesn't name the bride from the 1890s. We don't know her name, but it acknowledges her. That's what matters. I haven't seen the ghost since that night. The river has been calm. No mysterious floods, no apparitions. But something changed. A week after I filled in the grave, I was doing a routine patrol at dawn when I noticed something glinting in the shallows near mile marker 4. I waded in, curious, and picked it up. It was a ring. Silver. Old. Tarnished green in places, but still intact. It wasn't the ring I'd left on the casket. This one was different. Heavier, more ornate, and engraved on the inside, in letters so worn I could barely read them, was a date, June 14th, 1891. I stood there in the river, holding this impossible object, and I understood. This was her ring, the original bride's wedding ring, the one she'd been buried with over a century ago. She'd given it to me, not as a threat or a curse, but as a gift, as proof, as a way of saying she'd been real, she existed, she mattered. I keep it in a small wooden box on my desk at the ranger station. Sometimes, when I'm filling out paperwork or planning patrol routes, I open the box and look at it. A reminder that this job isn't just about maintaining trails and checking call boxes. It's about respecting the land and everyone who came before us, even the ones who've been forgotten. Especially the ones who've been forgotten. The Meriwether River flows quiet now. The trail is safe. Hikers walk mile marker 4 every day without incident, without knowing what lies beneath their feet. But I know. And somewhere, in whatever place ghosts go when their business is finished, 2 brides finally found their peace. The river remembers them. And so do I.
Friends, that was the story for today. I hope you enjoyed it and that it stayed with you in the best chilling way possible. If you made it all the way to the end, thank you. Your time and support truly mean more than you know. This channel is growing because of listeners like you. If you want more real and disturbing encounters like this, please consider subscribing. It really helps the channel continue bringing these stories to life. And if this story gave you chills, let me know in the comments. I read them all, and your thoughts make this community stronger. Until next time, turn off the lights, double-check the room, and I'll see you in the next story.